Hello, my friends. This is Anna Crichton, your resident psychologist, broadcasting from my Queanbeyan office in Australia. Okay, today's mini webinar is on how to recover from your brain's alarm system, the alarm that gets triggered off mostly in situations that do not require any survival mechanism. I'm going to share some slides with you, and here we are. Okay, recovery from your brain's alarm mechanism. What were we talking about in our last session several days ago? We mentioned that the brain is designed to survive rather than to thrive, and that the brain's main job is to prepare you to deal with danger. Most of the time that danger is really non-existent. It's something that the brain grossly overreacts to. And it happens very, very quickly. It happens in the core of the brain, in the so-called amygdala. It happens in a split second before you can even think. And suddenly you are absolutely flooded, suffused with stress hormones, with all the symptoms that we mentioned last time. It's a good state to be in when there is a real danger, but not when there's absolutely no danger. And this reaction was triggered off by some memory. Can we prevent that pretty uncomfortable stress response, the fight, flight, or freeze? No, we cannot prevent that. But what we can do, and what psychologists and psychiatry teaches us, is actually how to reduce the time of recovery, the time of recovery from those symptoms, and also how to start developing resilience to stress. Okay, so just a reminder, you remember the ignition switch alerts you to danger. This alarm center is deep in the brain and prepares you for immediate action in 1/32 of a second. And there's an immediate release of stress hormones and neurotransmitters such as cortisol and adrenaline, and you are prepared for fight, flight, or freeze. So how do we reduce the time of recovery? What can we do to take immediate action? Because these symptoms, and here I am referring to those symptoms I described last time, the symptoms that are of great value on the battlefield, but really totally over the top when you are nice and safe. How do we recover from this effect of stress? And in many cases, with many, many people, that stress is chronic. Well, I think I may have mentioned at the last session, there are 4 things you can do to immediately recover from that stress. And it may not take long, it won't take long, provided you practice these recovery actions. First thing is you have to soothe the amygdala. You remember that ignition switch deep in the brain, in the limbic system, that almond that's constantly on. It keeps on alarming the rest of the body, alerting the rest of the body. And so you have to basically not so much switch it off, because you cannot switch it off, it's on day and night, but you need to soothe it. You need to actually use physiological measures to settle it down a bit. The next thing you do is you let go of stress hormones. Then you need to increase the feel-good hormones and reestablish the communication with the smart brain. The smart brain right behind your forehead is really there to mitigate that wild sort of action of your amygdala. Today, we are just going to focus on soothing the amygdala. The other steps will be covered one at a time in my mini webinars to follow. How do you soothe the amygdala? How do you make it feel a little safer? We have to introduce yet another physiological hero, and that is the vagus or vagus nerve. This is the nerve that runs right through your body, starting in the brain, in medulla oblongata, and it goes through every single organ of your body, right? So you see it goes through the lungs, the heart, the spleen, stomach, liver, colon, kidney, small intestine. It ends actually in the small intestine and the colon. It has been discovered fairly recently that when you activate that vagus nerve, it actually acts in a very soothing way on the amygdala, on the deep core brain, through the various systems along the way, mostly heart. Now, there's a very quick way to activate the vagus nerve. And it's really extremely interesting that we all have the ability to do this, and we very seldom do it. You see, number one here is through breathing, and especially long exhales. And I know it sort of smacks of all sorts of less than traditional clinical measures, but it's really, really something that really works. Now I'm going to bring you back to me here, because what I'm going to show you is I have got biofeedback. It's called M-Wave technology. This USB port connects to the laptop, and this connects to my ear. I'm not going to demonstrate it today, how it works, but it actually measures heart rate variability. And this is a very objective way of showing the physiological stress, the level of physiological stress, or the or lack of stress. It's called the physiological coherence. And using this technology, I can test various strategies for releasing stress, the physiological stress. And so there will be things like meditation, for example, or verbal counseling, or using visualizations, visualizing, for example, nice quiet scenes. And while all these strategies really help to settle down, the absolute fastest way to settle yourself down is through long exhales. And I'm just going to show you, again, go back to sharing of my slides, because I'm just going to show you a slide, a diagram or biofeedback diagram of this method of the M-Wave technology. You see, I, within less than 2 minutes, managed to settle my physiology after actually quite a stressful incident. Recently, we had a hailstorm that was disintegrating the house in my very presence. So that was fairly stressful, and the memory of it causes quite a lot of stress. Now, using long exhales alone, I managed to settle down, settle the physiology and the stress response in less than 2 minutes. I won't describe exactly how it works. I will have to show it to you in a separate session, but explain the long exhales. So what you have to do with the long exhales, or what I do with my clients, is I ask them to, okay, let's go back to the slide, to slow down their breathing rate by focusing just on the exhale, to allow the lungs to fill in with air naturally without gasping for air, without taking in too much oxygen, because that could cause a bit of a lightheadedness. But just to focus on long exhales. Perhaps I should just demonstrate briefly how it's done. I ask the person to form sort of like a hole, or to form letter O with their mouth, and gently expel the air. It looks a little bit dramatic and funny. And then to allow the lungs to fill in with air naturally, and then again expel the air gently in a long, gentle exhale. As though you were whistling silently. Now, in order to practice this, I have a little tea light, little candle light over there on the top of that aquarium, and I put it in front of the person about a meter away from them, and I ask them to gently blow to make the light, the candle light, flicker gently. It has been actually established that this way of breathing out for about a minute, not more than that, will activate the vagus nerve that will then settle the amygdala, which means that you will recover from stress very, very quickly, and you will start having that sense of well-being. So practice this. Like I said, don't take too much air in. Just focus every now and then on your long, gentle exhales. And you can just practice maybe 2-3 long exhales every hour, and that's okay too. So the reason I'm asking you to practice this is that when the real stress comes, this response will come naturally. It will be your default response to stress. Because if you don't practice this, there's no way you are going to remember when the need arises. Okay, let's see if I have any more slides for you. We'll go back to sharing briefly. And all right, so that's the long exhales. You can also work on slowing down your breathing rate. If you manage to breathe between 6 to 12 breaths a minute for a little while, 2 minutes, maybe even a minute, you are going to settle down quite well too. There are other ways of activating the vagus nerve, in other words, of soothing the amygdala and the whole fight, flight, freeze survival mechanism of your brain through meditation. There's a great deal of wisdom behind meditation practices, especially the loving kindness meditation and the mindfulness. I will have separate webinars on each of these methods, but once again, the fastest, the strongest, the best, highly recommended method is a few long exhales to be practiced well before the need arises. Other ways of activating of the vagus nerve and soothing the stress symptoms is mild exercise. Do some walking. Go up and down the stairs a couple of times. Massages are very good as well. like pressure, massage, food reflexology, intermittent fasting. I need to talk a little bit more about it one day. But again, these are not immediate strategies of recovering from stress. These are more long-term. Yoga, Tai Chi. Laying on your right side apparently activates the vagus nerve. Coughing or tensing the stomach muscles. What I usually do, or usually, I mean, when I'm feeling quite stressed, when I do my long exhales, I press on the lower stomach as well, as though trying to expel the air. And that also helps with the activation of the vagus nerve. Singing or chanting, Om, apparently, also activates the vagus nerve. Okay, well, I hope I've given you enough strategies to start practicing. I recommend the long exhales. You don't have to breathe that way all the time. Just a couple of long exhales every so often, whenever you remember. I sometimes, when in a session with a client, I practice for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then ask the client to practice a little bit more when they drive back home. I practice this, I must say, quite often these days, and it sort of comes naturally. But I don't breathe that way all the time. Okay, guys, well, I recommend that you subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit my blog, where I have all my webinars in chronological order. So you will actually see how these strategies progress. Thank you very much for being here with me today, and looking forward to the next one. I'm planning to do about 2 webinars a week. Goodbye.